All right, you guys, you're not seeing me tonight because I'm already in my pajamas and you don't want to see me in my pajamas, trust me. So instead, you've got my dog and some lovely candles. We're going to read chapters 9 and 10. Chapter 9, Reunion. Morning was breaking over the swineherd's hut. The swineherd had built a fire and was preparing breakfast for himself and Odysseus. As he poured their wine, imagine that, wine for breakfast, the dogs began yelping outside. Your dogs sound happy. They do not snarl or growl, Odysseus said to the swineherd. They must be greeting someone they know and trust. Before Odysseus could say more, a young man appeared in the doorway of the hut. The swineherd jumped up, dropping the cups of wine. He ran to the young man and tearfully kissed him. Telemachus, my eyes, sweet light, the old man said. Odysseus gazed upon his son's handsome face. He was unable to move or speak. When he had last seen his beloved boy, Telemachus had been a baby. Now he was a young man with broad shoulders and a proud chest, reddish hair, and lively bright eyes. Indeed, he looked very much like his father. Telemachus smiled at the swineherd. You are a welcome sight to my eyes, too, he said. First, tell me, how is my mother? What has happened to her since I left? Word came to her that you were in grave danger, said the swineherd. She will be overjoyed to hear that you have found your way home alive. Come inside, eat, and rest. As Telemachus drew near the hearth, Odysseus rose silently from his seat and offered it to his son. Telemachus shook his head. Keep your seat, old man, he said. Another will serve me as well. Odysseus nodded and took his place again. His face half hidden by the hood of his cloak, he continued to gaze with wonder upon the young man. The swineherd threw fresh logs on the fire and spread a fleece on the ground for Telemachus. Then he prepared meat from the previous night's meal and a basket of bread. He served honeyed wine in wooden cups. When the three men had finished their meal, Telemachus spoke softly to the swineherd. Tell me, where does your guest come from? He asked. What ship and what crew brought him here? He comes from Crete and has traveled all over the world. I put him in your hands now. Offer him the hospitality of your father's house. Telemachus shook his head sadly. How can I take a guest into our house when it is overrun by my mother's suitors? I can only offer him gifts. I will clothe him with a cloak and tunic, and give him fine sandals and a sword, and send him wherever he wants to go. But for now I will visit with him while you hurry to my mother and tell her of my safe return. The swineherd nodded and stood up. Speak to her in secret, said Telemachus. Let no one else know that I am here. I understand, said the swineherd. Then he took his leave of Telemachus and Odysseus and set off for the palace. After the swineherd had left, Odysseus saw a tall, fair woman appear in the doorway of the hut. Telemachus seemed not to take notice of her, but the dogs whimpered and cowered in fear. The woman beckoned to Odysseus. He quietly left the fire and stepped outside. He followed her to a stone wall. Facing the woman in the morning light, Odysseus saw that it was the goddess Athena. Odysseus, it is time to tell your son the truth, the goddess said. Then the two of you must plan your revenge on the suitors and make your way to town together. I will follow closely behind. I am ready for a fight. Athena touched Odysseus with her wand, and instantly the ragged garments fell away from his body, and he was clad in a fine tunic and cloak. He was taller and looked much younger. His face was bronzed, his cheeks full. He had dark hair and a dark beard. Athena had restored Odysseus to his strongest, most vital self. Before Odysseus could speak, the goddess vanished in the morning light. Odysseus returned to the hut. When Telemachus saw him, a look of wonder and fear came over his face. He could barely speak. "Stranger, you have changed," he stammered. "You must be a god from the Mount Olympus. Spare me harm. Allow me to make a sacrifice to you." Odysseus spoke quietly. "I am no god, Telemachus," he said. "I am the one you have mourned for, the one for whom you have suffered great pain and injury. I am your father." The tears that Odysseus had long held back now streamed down his face. But Telemachus shook his head. "No, you cannot be my father. You are a demon casting a spell, or you are a god. You were an old man, and now you are young." "I am not an immortal," said Odysseus, "but I have been blessed by a goddess. After 20 years of wandering and torment, Athena has brought me home to Ithaca. She changed me into an old man, and now I am a young man once more. It is easy for the gods to cast a man down and then raise him up again." Hearing these words, Telemachus began to weep. He grabbed his father and hugged him, and the two sobbed together. Their cries were wild and piercing, like those of eagles whose young have been stolen from them. After 20 long years, father and son were finally reunited. Chapter 10. A Plan for Revenge. Sitting together in the swineherd's hut, Odysseus and Telemachus asked many questions of each other. "What ship brought you here, father?" said Telemachus. "Where is your crew?" Odysseus told how King Alcinous had sent him home with the help of the best sailors in the world. "I slept all through the voyage," he said, "only to wake and find myself alone on shore, surrounded by gold and bronze treasure. With the help of Athena, I hid everything in the cave of the nymphs. Then Athena sent me here to find you. She wishes us now to plot our revenge against our enemies." "It may be hard for us to fight all of them," said Telemachus. "We are only 2, and they number nearly 120. "I believe Athena will help us," said Odysseus, "as will her father Zeus. Do you think we will then be strong enough?" "Oh, with the help of Zeus and Athena, we will surely defeat our enemies," said Telemachus. "Tell me what we must do." "Tomorrow at daybreak, you must go home alone," said Odysseus. "I will disguise myself as a beggar again and travel to the palace. Do not protest if the suitors abuse me when I arrive. Even if they shout names at me or throw things at me, do not speak a word in my favor." "When will we fight them?" asked Telemachus. "When Athena whispers to me that the time has come, I will nod to you. You must then take all the swords and spears and shields from the hall and hide them in an upstairs room." "What will I tell the others when they ask why I am doing this?" asked Telemachus. "Say you are removing the weapons so they will not be harmed from the smoke of the fires. Leave weapons only for you and me, 2 swords, 2 spears, and 2 leather shields. And remember, my son, tell no one that you have seen me, not the swineherd, not any of the servants, nor my old father, or even your mother." As the day wore on, Odysseus and Telemachus made further plans. Though Odysseus had finally returned to Ithaca, he knew he still could not rest. There was one more great battle to fight, but this one he would fight with his son. I'm going to keep reading Book 6, The Final Battle. Chapter 1, Penelope. Penelope, queen of Ithaca, wept and prayed to the gods as she waited for news of her son Telemachus. 5 weeks earlier, the young man had sailed away in search of his long-lost father, Odysseus. Shortly after his departure, Penelope had learned that her suitors were plotting to murder her son on his journey home. For years, these wicked men had tried to take Odysseus' place. They tormented Penelope daily, invading her home and demanding that she choose one of them for her husband. But Penelope remained fiercely loyal to Odysseus, enduring threats and humiliation. She led the suitors on with false promises of marriage, then put them off again and again by refusing to choose whom to wed. Now Penelope wept for both Odysseus and Telemachus. As she paced in her chamber, she heard someone calling to her from the courtyard below. Penelope rushed to the window and saw the old swineherd, who lived on the pig farm near the shore. The swineherd was surrounded by Penelope's servants and suitors. "My lady, weep no more," the swineherd called to Penelope. "Your son is safe. Yesterday his ship docked at our island. He now rests at my hut." Hearing this news, Penelope and her handmaidens wept tears of joy. But the suitors were plainly unhappy to hear that Telemachus had returned safely to Ithaca. When Penelope learned they were making a new plot to kill her son, she went downstairs to confront them. Filled with fury, she called out to Antinous, the leader of the villains. "Antinous, do you not remember how my husband once saved your father from an angry mob?" Penelope said. "And now you try to take Odysseus' place and murder his son. How dare you?" Before Antinous could answer, one of the other suitors called out from the crowd, "Don't worry, Queen Penelope. Your son has nothing to fear from us. Of course, should the gods decree that he die, there is nothing we can do." Helpless in the face of their evil, Penelope could say no more. She returned to her chamber. She wept bitter tears for her husband and son, until finally the gray-eyed goddess Athena closed Penelope's eyelids and gave her the gift of sleep. I'm going to stop there, and the next one will be chapters 2 and 3.